The soundtrack alone makes this motion picture legendary. Okay, everybody, today we're going all the way back to 1982 to look at a motion picture that, to me, other than the Terminator franchise, is really what I think of Arnold Schwarzenegger for the most. And it's a motion picture that launched a whole bunch of imitators, a whole bunch of copycats, and kind of a whole genre that got thrown in our faces for about 7 or 8 years. We are talking about the original Conan the Barbarian. No, not that piece of crap they made a few years ago with that remake. No, the original 1982 Conan the Barbarian. Before we dig into it anymore, before we dig into this legendary gem any farther, once and again, and as always, to the trailer.
Fire and wind come from the sky, from the gods of the sky. But Crum is your god. Crum, and he lives in the earth. Once giants lived in the earth, Conan. And in the darkness of chaos, they fooled Crum. And they took from him the enigma of steel. Crum was angered, and the earth shook. And fire and wind struck down these giants, and they threw their bodies into the waters. But in their rage, the gods forgot the secret of steel and left it on the battlefield. And we who found it are just men. Not gods, not giants, just men. And the secret of steel has always carried with it a mystery. You must learn its riddle, Conan. You must learn its discipline. For no one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Between the time when the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of. And unto this, Conan, destined to bear the jeweled crown of Aquilonia upon a troubled brow. It is I, his chronicler, who alone can tell thee of his saga. Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Alright, this motion picture was directed by John Milius. Yeah, we're talking about a legendary character. Let's run the numbers. We're talking about he directed little motion pictures like Big Wednesday, and Red Dawn, and Dillinger, and Flight of the Intruder, and The Wind and the Lion. But really, he was a writer. You know, he did some screenplay writing, some writing. We're talking about stuff on the Dirty Harry stuff. We're talking Apocalypse Now, for God's sakes. So, writer, director, guy had his fingers in everything, talented dude, and he did this, and this shit is legendary in and of itself. Alright, everybody, there is literally a monstrosity of people to get through in this motion picture. So we're going to try to make it go fast. We're trying to make it go quick, but we're going to try to nail everybody. So let's do this. Starring as Conan the Barbarian himself. We're talking Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's do this. Of course, he was in The Terminator. Of course, we're talking about stuff like Red Heat and The Running Man and Commando. And of course, T2. I mean, come on. And Twins and Kindergarten Cop and The Predator and fucking End of Days and even Jingle All the Way and, you know, Stay Hungry and The Expendables and True Lies and stuff like, you know, Twins and Junior and did I say Kindergarten Cop? I can't remember. Who knows? Who cares? It doesn't make a difference. He's done action. He's done comedy. He's done stuff with the devil. He's done stuff with space aliens. What a career. Playing Thulsa Doom! Oh my God. I'm going to get to what he did to this movie in a James Earl Jones. Let's do this. We're talking about he was in The Greatest. He was in The Hunt for Red October and Coming to America and The Great White Hope and Swashbuckler and Blood Tide and Soul Man and Field of Dreams and Excessive Force. I covered that not too long ago. And Best of the Best and Patriot Games. All kinds of television work. And of course, he was the voice of Mufasa in The Lion King and more obviously. The voice of Darth Vader himself in the Star Wars series. Come on, man. James Earl Jones is the shit, and you know it. Playing King Osric, Max von Sydow. Oh, we're going to have fun with this. Of course, he was in motion pictures like Minority Report, and Judge Dredd, and Needful Things, and Hannah and Her Sisters, and The Seventh Seal way back in the day, and Dreamscape, and Dune, and Victory, and he was fucking banging Flash Gordon, for God's sakes. I mean, come on. He was in The Ultimate Warrior, which everybody should try to go find and look up with Yul Brynner, and 3 Days of the Condor, and of course he was in The Exorcist. I mean, legendary career, enough said. Playing Valeria, Sandahl Bergman. I'm going to talk about her in a little bit. Not a huge career. I mean, she was in that legendary Hell Comes to Frogtown with a Rowdy Roddy Piper. And she was in She and Stewardess School and Airplane 2 and Loving Lulu. And she had a great little part, small, in All That Jazz. And she had kind of small roles in a lot of other flicks. It is what it is. But she was in this. This will be what we remember her for the most, by far, without question, unless you're a really big Rowdy Roddy Piper fan. Bring it, girl! The Wizard. The one and only Mako. How many times have I talked about him before? Let's just run the numbers. This is getting to be like secondhand. We're talking about he was in stuff like The Perfect Weapon. He was in stuff like The Killer Elite, An Eye for an Eye, Under the Rainbow, Sidekicks, and Rising Sun, for Christ's sakes, and Pearl Harbor, and Bulletproof Monk, The Sand Pebbles, the Great Bank Robbery, and so many TV shows. I couldn't fucking remember them. If you put a gun to my head, it doesn't make a difference. The man is, was, always shall be, he's gone now, it doesn't make a difference, a legend. Now there is an onslaught of people that I'm just going to go through really quick, just to name them, because they all had roles in this thing. Hey, one of them, the first one I'm going to mention, had bigger roles than a couple of the other people in the motion picture, but he didn't really do anything else after this. So, you know, it is what it is, but I'm going to go through the names. We're talking Gerry, Lopez, Subotai. We're talking about he was in movies like, you know, Big Wednesday and North Shore and Farewell to the King. He was a surfer, not really an actor, but he did what he did. That's all that matters. Ben Davidson, come on, Necessary Roughness, lots of TV work. He's a football player. You got Sven-Ole Thorsen. Yeah, he's been in a lot of shit. Gladiator, Running Man, Twins, Red Heat. He was a bodybuilder buddy of Arnold, is what it is. And you got Franco Columbu. Come on, man. World Championship bodybuilder, Running Man, Terminator, Last Man Standing. We're talking about Nadiuska. And I know I probably pronounced that wrong, but it doesn't make a difference. And she was in stuff like Spanish Fly and Black Commando. William Smith, fucking legend. Every which way you can. Rumblefish, all kinds of biker flicks back in the day. It is what it is. Cassandra Gava, come on, man. Mortal Passions, Dead by Dawn. You know, Louis Barbu, come on. The red hair himself. He was in The Witch's Mountain, Supersonic Man, Night of the Skull, and the late Valérie Quennessen. She was in French Postcards. She was in Summer Lovers way back in the day. That little racy flick that she was in with Daryl Hannah and shit. So, there is a fucking plethora of humanity in this motion picture where you're like, hey, is what it is, was what it was. Let's get going to the story. Okay, everybody, this is really going to be hard to kind of keep the 90 seconds or less, but I'm going to try to nail it into the ballpark. Do what I do, make it fast, so we can keep it short, keep it fast, keep it entertaining, keep it moving, so we can get to where we much rather be. The summation. You got Conan. He's just a kid at the time, and he is living in this village with his parents, and his father teaches him about the riddle of steel. And he teaches him the one thing he can trust is steel. Well, before you know it, out of nowhere, on one awfully cold day, these guys show up on horseback, you know, carrying a staff with a couple of serpent heads facing each other on it, and they kill everybody in the town. Pretty fucked up. It is what it is. And then they take Conan, and they lead him off up north, where he is to be a slave for the next 20 or whatever years, simply marching in a circle, pushing a big machine around. Is what it was. He grows big. He's strong. He turns into this big monster man that can push the machine all by himself. And then one day they get this idea, why don't we use this guy for entertainment and throw him into some pit fighting? 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. Well, what do you know? Old Conan takes to it like a fish out of water, and he starts killing everybody they put him in there with. And as a reward, they send him off to the east to study with the Asian masters, where they really teach him how to be like the ultimate friggin' fighting machine. They give him chicks. They do all kinds of crazy shit. It is what it is. Until one day, hey, you know what? They free him. He goes off into the wilderness by himself, kills a bunch of dogs, finds a sword, and he's off and running. Runs into this, I don't know, witch, wizard, I don't know what the hell she is. It is what it is. Who cares? Anyway, he sits there, has a night of funsy onesies with her before she turns into a ball of flame, flies down the street, but chained up outside her house is Subotai. And they become fast partners. They go running around, and all of a sudden one night they're going to break into this big temple and steal some shit, where they meet one Valeria. And the 3 of them team up and go in there, where Conan steals some jewels and finds out, oh my God, these Nimrods are the same Nimrods that killed my family, that killed my village. He's less than happy. So they go, they take off, they're partying, they're doing whatever they do, where King Osric brings them from the party to his throne and says, these guys have kidnapped my daughter. I want my daughter back. I'll give you all the money in the world to go and get her. Well, they send old Conan and the boys in there to go and to bring this girl back, but you know, Valeria, Subotai, they don't want to do it. Conan wants to do it. It is what it is. He takes off on his own. Well, he doesn't really pull it off. Gets his ass whooped, kind of really. And then he gets beaten down. He gets crucified to the tree of woe. And just when you think he's about to die, Valeria, Subotai come. They rescue him. They bring him back to this hut of this wizard that he just met like 10 minutes prior, and they all fight the demons or whatever the hell it is they're doing. I can't really remember. To bring him back from the dead. Where? Once that happens, they team up to go get that girl and to go kick some fucking Thulsa Doom ass for basically crucifying him, murdering his family, leading a cult of fucking snake worshippers, and damaging everything he runs into, basically. You get the idea. You get the idea. There's a lot I could have covered in this. There's a lot I could have worked out. But we'll get to that in the summation, because that's where we're going to have fun. Alright, everybody, does Conan the Barbarian work? Come on, don't waste my time. Conan the Barbarian works in a big, brutal, awesome, wicked way, and it really is the best of any of these kind of motion pictures in the series. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, let's break down the big 3 before we have a whole bunch of fun talking about this thing in a moment. We're talking about the directing. This motion picture looks beautiful, folks. It does. Any way you cut it, any way you slice it, this picture looks amazing. Head and shoulders above anything else ever filmed in the genre. Without question. Without second thought. Conan the Barbarian looks the best. Need I say more? The writing! The writing's good. I mean, come on, it's a barbarian flick about wizards and goofy shit, but the writing's good. The words coming out of the mouths are fine. The story is cohesive. It is what it is. The writing works. You couldn't ask for more in a motion picture like this. The acting. Oh my God. This is one of the things that sets this motion picture far, far and above anything else that came up afterwards. Whether it was the Beastmaster, which, hey, I like and I love it, is what it is, or the Warrior and the Sorceress, or all those other it doesn't make a difference. The acting in this motion picture is so superior to any of those other motion pictures. You got Max von Sydow, for Christ's sake. He is killing it as King Osric. Yes, he's not on screen all that much, but when he's on screen, he is phenomenal. One of the unsung heroes of this motion picture, by the way, is Sandahl Bergman. I kid you not. She does a really good job in this, and I'll cover more of her character later. But really, she does some good work in this motion picture. And that leads us to the one and only, the man who basically almost stole the show, for Christ's sake, which is James Earl Jones as Thulsa Doom. He is spot on amazing. If you don't have a good baddie, you can't have a good goodie. If you don't have the antagonist-protagonist relationship to the hilt, you are not going to have a motion picture. And what sold this motion picture over the top was James Earl Jones. Like Ricardo Montalban pushed Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan into another level, he knocked this thing out the park. When they're having that whole conversation where they beat the shit out of Conan, and he's like, Rexor was this, and Thorsen was upset. But we are talking that is Shakespeare. We are talking it is Hamlet. We are talking it is stage production delivery. When you watch him giving that shit, you sit there and you say to yourself, this is a guy who knows the craft of acting. This is the guy who knows how to deliver that level of gravitas and power with sometimes a booming voice, sometimes incredible subtlety. But he brings this character from one thing into a multi-dimensional, multi-layered character where you actually see this guy talking about, my boy was beside himself. This is what pains me. And when he delivers all that kind of stuff, he does it to a level and a degree that takes Conan the Barbarian and doesn't leave it in a hack and slash type of ballpark. It lifts it into something where you can say, look at the fuck I am watching. He is amazing in this and deserves so much credit. Now let's get back on track with the motion picture in general. You are talking about a motion picture when it first came out. My God, it was kind of shocking. It was so well put together, but so graphic. I remember going to see it. I mean, we're talking, there was like buckets of blood flying everywhere. The sword fighting scenes were just damn well ridiculous. There was blood flying here, there was blood flying there, there was nudity all over the place, and there was all kinds of things where you're like, Jesus, what this is not a Sinbad the Sailor movie. What the hell am I watching? And they took it to a level, but did it so well and so respectably that when other motion pictures tried to copy it, when other motion pictures tried to do it, they just look hackneyed and silly and stupid, and you're like, well, that's kind of dumb. But this motion picture, when it put it in there, it was shocking. It was really eye-catching, but they did it in such a way where you're sitting there saying, my God, these guys know how to make a movie and get away with what would almost be grindhouse-type stuff in a major motion picture and make it look cool and respectable. And one of the things that really lifts us above any of the other kind of motion pictures in the genre is the fact that they put so much time get you to care about the Conan character. I mean, really, you watch it from when the movie starts out and he loses his father and his mother is beheaded right in front of him. And the scenes are played so well where little Conan, literally as his mother falls, he's just staring at his hand like, Mom's gone. Everything I ever cared for is destroyed. And then you follow him through his slavery, which doesn't take long, but you sit there and you watch the evolution of the character, and you care about the evolution of the character. It's not just slapped in there like they did in all the other movies, whether it was starring Carradine or Lee Horsley or the Barbarian Brothers. This one you actually care about the character, and you care about the people in the motion picture with him. And that's where I'm going to go back to Sandahl Bergman's character again of Valeria. If it wasn't for that character, this motion picture wouldn't have worked. I'm telling you, it wouldn't have worked. She was the perfect 50-50 yin-yang to him that really balanced out the character. And one of the reasons for that is because she made his life seem like something that had now reached a peak of why are they doing this? Is his vengeance going to undo everything that they've lived for and loved for and created? Is it going to ruin it? His need to get back at Thulsa Doom and the cult. One of the scenes that's honestly one of my favorite in this motion picture is simply after they get done knocking boots and doing their whole thing together, where you see her lift up Conan, and she doesn't speak. There's other parts in the motion picture where she declares her love for him and her need for him and what she would do for him, ultimately sacrificing herself. But when she just takes him and she holds him in her arms, and you see her grab his head, and you see her close her eyes and look down at that, you're like, this is the first time in this person's life, this is the first time in her life where she has what she's always wanted. Somebody to care about, somebody to love, something that's hers, and it's not just this passing thing, or it's not just this life of loneliness. And it was taking that unity between Conan and Valeria that made the motion picture have so much more weight to it, instead of just a guy that was, getting vengeance about his family, but being willing to sacrifice all the love in the world that he had now just to go full on and get back at those people for what they had done. That relationship means something in this movie, and the lack of it is what basically sunk the second one, and it really elevated it, and her portrayal of Valeria in this cannot be understated, it cannot be underwhelmed. It is as important to this motion picture as Conan and Thulsa Doom themselves, point blank. Also, it must be said, the score to this motion picture by Basil Poldoris, hope I pronounced that right, is simply one of the most amazing scores ever put in a motion picture. And you cannot, honest to God, in your mind, picture Conan the Barbarian without that score. It lifts it up and makes this movie even bigger and better than it ever probably even should have been. The music to this thing is amazing. Just like you can't imagine Jaws, just like you can't imagine Rocky without that amazing soundtrack. Just like you can't imagine Star Trek without that amazing soundtrack, or Star Wars without that amazing soundtrack. This motion picture is the same. Take any of the scenes, shut off the volume, watch them. Different. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Same thing would have happened with Jaws and Rocky and Star. Any of those. Take the music out and you're like, oh, this kind of falls flat. And it's the same thing here. The score to this motion picture is friggin' phenomenal. You can sit there and listen to it without the movie and feel like you're going to break through a window behind you and just jump on the horse and punch somebody in the fucking face. It doesn't make a difference. It's one of the most amazing scores ever put to celluloid. Now, before I take off, I want to talk about one thing that this motion picture had that a lot of the other ones never could capture, including the sequel. Conan, the Destroyer, it felt like almost a kid movie. They took a lot of the blood out, the sex, anything kind of like that. They dumbed it down, they neutered it, and they made it more palatable to a larger audience. And some people like that, and that's all fine and dandy. But this is the movie that, to me, stands about way above all the rest, simply because, A, they had a production value they didn't care about. This is a big Dino De Laurentiis film, man. This isn't some little thing where they're taking styrofoam, well, even though there's some in this movie, and just throwing it together and making it look like shit in some goddamn village someplace. They spared no expense, and they put it in and made it beautiful. But the thing that the other movies lacked was a sense of melancholy to a degree that overwhelms this motion picture. Yes, he's Conan, he's going out there, he's killing, he's destroying and all that. But there is a certain degree of melancholy over this motion picture where you're watching it saying, I know he's going to lose her. I know he's going to wind up alone. I know he came from a background that's fucked up. I know he's endured hardships. And I know no matter how this ends, it's going to be Conan sitting there, kind of alone, kind of hollow inside, kind of broken, even if successful. And that's what this motion picture had. They didn't show any of that kind of stuff in Conan the Destroyer. God knows they didn't show it in any of those other versions and remakes and shit where it was just a chance to get a sword in somebody's hand, a couple tits on the screen, and run for broke. This movie is way, way, way different, and it way, way, way stands above the crowd. All right, everybody. Get out there and check out Conan the Barbarian if you haven't already. It's violent as all hell. It's got a lot of nudity. There's crazy shit going on. There's swords and sorceries and all kinds of stuff, and there's even cannibalism in the fucking thing. So do not put this in the TV thinking this is something you're going to pop in front of your kid when they're young and show them. Don't do that. If you've seen part 2, don't think part 1 is like it and just heave it in. That would be bad. It's a phenomenal motion picture that should never be overlooked, should never be forgotten. And simply, really the fact that it doesn't get talked about as much as it should anymore kind of throws me, because this thing was a A-level production. It was just amazing, and it should never, ever, ever be forgotten. Take care. Stay out of trouble. Be kind to a stranger. Be there for a friend. But above all else, no matter what, at any time, any place, anywhere, never, and I mean ever, ever, take any bullshit from anybody. See you soon.